Hi everybody, welcome to KittyKatsCircus. Today we're going to talk about the history of stilt walking. I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to stilts. Yes, it's true, that will come out in this video. I was inspired to make this video because somebody commented on a video of mine on YouTube and said, "That ain't stilt walking. Google Kent Hop Pickers. That's stilt walking." So naturally, I Googled it and I began going down a rabbit hole of the oldest documentation of stilt walking, figuring out how far back does this actually go. I spent hours and hours going down the rabbit hole of the history of stilt walking, and I'm really excited to share it with you guys for the few people that might be interested. Welcome to Stilts History, Episode 1. Let's get right down to it. Who first walked on stilts? Before circus, before carnival, and before costume, someone somewhere in history strapped stilts to their feet and stood taller than everybody else. But why? When I first learned how to stilt walk, I did not know I was stepping into something that was thousands of years old. The part that I find almost the most fascinating is that historians don't believe that stilts were just made once somewhere in the world and then spread. They believe that stilts were made over and over again in different parts of the world, having no connection to the other. And I just think that's really cool that everybody can have access to stilts, making do with what they got. And I love that the mind took so many people there who had never even spoke to one another. Section 1, the oldest records. Are you ready for this? This is pretty crazy. After a lot of digging, I found that the earliest record of stilt walking comes from ancient Greece in 550 BCE. That's like a long time ago. In case you didn't get that, that was 2,575 years ago. And that's just the first visual documentation of stilt walking. I wonder how long it was around before people actually started to write about it and to paint about it. In ancient Greece, we see that the earliest record of stilt walking comes from Attic black figure amphora. A vase painting shows 5 bearded men on stilts, indicating that the practice was used for entertainment and public performance. The other earliest record of stilt walking comes from the spring and fall era of 500 BCE in China. This is the earliest written reference to stilt walking in a book called Li Zi in the later chapter Shu Fu. In this chapter of this book, it describes an entertainer navigating a party on stilts, juggling weapons, and doing other fun tricks. This shows us that this person was experienced on their stilts. They practiced on their stilts. This wasn't just something that they stood up and stood there to look cool. They knew what they were doing. And it was all of this time ago. One Chinese legend says that stilt walking started as a comeback. The diplomat Yan Ying was mocked for being so short. So one day he tied stilts to his feet, stood taller than everybody else, and clapped back with sarcasm. Which I kind of know how this guy feels. I'll never forget in high school, people way taller than me lowering down to my level and being like, "So this is what the view's like down here." Guess what? I'm taller than you now. For Yan Ying, the story goes that people loved him up on stilts so much that stilts actually became a part of their culture and festival moving forward. And it continues to this day. In both of these examples, for the earliest records of stilt walking, they're both used for performance or entertainment, which is interesting because as we go a little bit later into the future, it becomes more about advancing work. Section 2, the survival theory. As you can see in the photos, these French shepherds from marshlands needed stilts to navigate the large and marshy areas. People who lived in these areas often would use stilts for practical purposes, like working in swamps or crossing full rivers. In southern France, some shepherds in the Landes region used stilts so that they could see over their marshes and keep an eye on their sheep. When you look at some of these pictures, you can really see how comfortable these people were on their stilts. Stilting wasn't just a sometimes thing, it was an all the time thing. They even had these special sticks with them that they would put in the ground and be able to sit on, supporting them like a tripod. And I just think I definitely need that if I ever go back to Burning Man. There's even a drawing and a photo of a mailman traveling on stilts delivering the mail. I imagine this helped him avoid wet and marshy areas to keep himself dry. It also definitely helped him walk further in a shorter amount of time with that nice long stride. So to make his job easier, he just slapped on some stilts and said, "Let's go." I do think it's interesting though, if you look at this picture of the mailman closely enough, you can see that he's actually barefoot. He does have socks on, but definitely no shoes, and I just think, ouch. There's also a story of a man named Sylvain Dornan. He was raised amongst the stilt walking farmers of the southern region in France, and he learned quite a bit about efficiency on stilts from a young age. In 1891, Sylvain Dornan left Paris on his stilts on March 12th and arrived 58 days later to Moscow. What? That's insane. That is approximately 1,800 miles. That means he was averaging about 35 miles per day on his stilts. When you're up on stilts, you have a longer stride, your feet stay dry, your eyes are higher, making long distance travel less effort. The trip captured quite a bit of public attention, as many people have never seen someone on stilts, let alone traveling from Paris to Moscow on stilts. People were shocked and in awe for sure, celebrating his journey. I've always wanted to go on a long adventure on my stilts. Maybe not a 58-day journey, but maybe one day where I just go really far. We'll see. Continuing on, stilts contributing to work and farming. Are you ready for this? It's finally that full circle moment. The Kent hop pickers. Stilts were used in hop fields in Kent, England, mainly during the 18th and the 19th century. At the time, hop farming was booming and labor intensive. Before modern equipment, pickers had two options: climb ladders, which is slower and dangerous, or put on some stilts. Stilts allowed workers to move quickly between plants, stay at harvesting height, avoid constantly climbing up and down. So instead of resetting a ladder every few feet, they could literally just walk at the elevation that they needed to be and get the job done. It basically turned harvesting into a rhythmic process instead of stop-and-go labor. And apparently to this day, the practice has completely disappeared. There is no longer records of people picking hops on their stilts. I wonder if it's something that might ever be efficient to bring back, but maybe not. Maybe it lived its time. Section 3, height does something psychological. Here's another reason stilts keep popping up throughout history, because height does something psychological for sure. In France, being on stilts started off as practical. Get higher, see farther. Have sticks on your feet, don't get your feet wet. Wear tall sticks instead of moving a heavy ladder. It makes sense. But humans didn't just notice what height let them see. They noticed how other people reacted to the height. That's why stories like the Chinese diplomat exist. Even if it's a legend, it's pointing at something real. The second you get taller, the room reacts. The second you get taller, you catch the eye of every surrounding person. Most people feel wobbly on their own two legs. So when they see someone moving naturally and gracefully and fluid on their stilts, it doesn't just look impressive, it looks unreal. Mostly because with the height, they're closer to the unknown. They're closer to something bigger than human. I never saw myself learning stilts. It was so not on my bingo card of life. The first few times I got tall, I was so scared. I remember saying, I'm gonna throw up, I'm so afraid. And I also never wanted to let go of someone's hand or the wall. The thought of just being out in the open with my stilts on scared the heck out of me. Now, years later, I'm throwing out crazy tricks on my stilts, practicing my booty off. It's my #1 job, and it's my favorite thing in the world. For my work, I get to travel the United States working at fairs throughout the summer. I swear at least one child every day, when I turn a corner and this kid locks eyes with me, this is their face. And I'm telling you, that face is my favorite. In their minds, they're like, what is even happening? How is this even possible? They're struck with awe. They're struck with questions. How do you balance? What happens if you fall? How did you get so tall? And I love to answer back to that. Oh, I ate all of my vegetables and I listened to everything my mom and dad told me to do, which is not true, but that's okay. Their shock is my joy. I love engaging in the magic of the moment and giving these kids memories to cherish for a lifetime. It's fun to play around with the magic of the moment, but I always do come back to the facts with the kids. I have them lock eyes with me and I'm like, listen, you can do anything you set your mind to. No matter how crazy or how scary, you can do it as long as you work for it. You can do anything you set your mind to, even if that means learning how to stilt walk and running away with the circus. The joy, the wonder, the awe in their faces really brings me so much joy. It's definitely one of the biggest highlights of my job. I often think about these kids. I wonder if they ever thought more about stilt walking, and I wonder if they began to dream any bigger that day. I love giving the kids moments to cherish for a lifetime because I also cherish them for a lifetime. Height just creates an effect that humans can't ignore. Visibility, emotion, a hint of risk. That's why this tool keeps resurfacing across history. Height doesn't just change what you can see, it changes what others believe that they're seeing. In the next episode, we're gonna follow what happens when you take stilts out of the farm and bring it into the streets for festival. How height becomes a community role, and how traditions like the Moko Jumbies shift from protection into festival and celebration. I've gathered so much information and I'm really excited to share it with you. So be sure to check my page for the next video. See you next time.